So after those long years of education, formal, semi-formal, and informal, including apprenticeship and training, you are deemed as having acquired the relevant professional and personal uh, values and experiences relevant to function at the job market. And these are referred to as your employable skills, the skills that will make you relevant at the job market. Of course, you might be ambitious, you might be highly connected, but in the 21st century, the most sought after employable skills are your what they refer to as the 4 C's, i.e. your i.e. creativity, um, critical thinking skills, communication, and then cooperative skills or ability to work with a team. So these are the most sought after um, employable skills your prospective employer is looking for in you. You should be able to possess all these um, to be able to function within the job market effectively in the 21st century. Uh, it is not unusual for people to fail interviews, and there are several factors that account for these failures. Today, I'm going to look at the reasons uh, some reasons that account for uh, your failures or the failure of people at interviews because um, it is important to clear the hurdle of interviews if you want to land a job within the employment space. And so it is important that uh, we acquaint ourselves with some of these relevant skills, some of these relevant experiences in the past, in order that we do not go and suffer a similar fate. And as I said, I am going to focus on job interviews because interviews are of kinds. It could be selection interviews for schools, selection interview for scholarships. But today I'm going to zero in on interviews, job interviews, the reasons that account for your failures. And I am also going to uh, be specific. I'm going to be specific about what kind of interview it is, whether panel or behavioral or technical. And I'm going to settle on a panel interview, appearing before a panel interview. How do you compose yourself? How do you avoid, uh, you know, these situations that could account for your failure? The first reason that could account for your failure or that must have accounted for your failure in the past is lack of preparation or research about the company. You went and sat in front of the company, in front of the panel extempore. You did not prepare. You did not do any background checks about the company. Um, it's been said that uh, failure to prepare is failure to fail. So as you fail to prepare, it means that you are preparing to fail. You didn't bother to find out what the mission of the company is. You didn't look at the products and services delivered by the company. You didn't also bother to look at the recent news about the company you wish to work with. Um, you know, what are its achievements? What are the company's achievements? What are its competitors? What is the history of the company? Industry trends and all that. You didn't bother to find out, any of these about the company. So you went there and they asked you questions about any of these, any of these parameters. You were unable to provide, uh, you know, an encouraging an encouraging response. And so they think that you are not enthusiastic about the job you apply for, and that could account for your rejection, the denial of that opportunity you so much, wish to capitalize. And so the first reason that could account for your inability to land a job or your failure at the interview is lack of preparation. Yes, lack of preparation or research about the company you so much wish to work with. So to avert this, what do you do? It is important that before you appear before you attend the interview, before you appear in front of the panel, you would have done these background checks about the company. You leave an impression if you are able to give responses on all these trends, the company's missions, history, achievements, industry, products and services. You leave with them an impression that you are indeed enthusiastic to work with their company. And so it is important that in order to avoid a disappointment arising from lack of preparedness, you adequately prepare before appearing in front of the panel. Now, as part of your preparations too, it is important, as part of your preparations, it is important that you look for experienced people who experienced interviewers, I mean, yes, who could provide you with a mock interview so that they will allay any fears, make you less nervy before appearing, in front of the panel on the D-Day. So look for people who have experience in interviewing, experienced interviewers. In the absence of those, you can look for family members. So they will be in the stead of an interviewer. They will ask you questions. You record your responses. You can play back those responses. And at hindsight, you would correct what needs to be corrected before you appear in front of the panel on your said date. Good. So that is the first point. You went there ill prepared. Yes, you went to sit in front of the panel ill prepared, and so that's accounted for your failure. Good. The second reason that could account for your failure at your job interview, or must have accounted for your failure at your job interview, is inappropriate behavior or unprofessionalism. Yes, people tend to demonstrate inappropriate behaviors or unprofessionalisms at interviews. Now, what constitutes an unprofessionalism or inappropriate behavior? One of them is being late. If you are late for an interview, it's a very bad signal to your prospective employer. It doesn't inspire any confidence in them being late. So, what time should I get to the interview or the interviewing premises? It is advised that you reach your interviewing premises at least 15 minutes before the start of the interview. Now, I advise that you set off early enough to make room for any as a hedge against any unforeseen contingencies. Your car could break along the way, and getting a connecting vehicle could be a problem. And if you did not make enough time to cater for those unforeseen contingencies, you could end up arriving at the interview center late, and this could lead to you losing out on the job you so much desire. So, unprofessionalism, one of them being late. The second activity that constitutes unprofessionalism is the use of inappropriate language. Yes, you know what to say, when and where, So it is appearing before a panel is a serious exercise, especially when your job is at stake, your future job is at stake. And so it is important that you employ the correct you employ the correct use of language. Try and avoid any kind of unprofessional, any kind of informal cliches and jargons, you know, uh, that are not acceptable within the corporate circles. So one being late, two not using the appropriate language, and then finally being disrespectful. Yes, perhaps you went to the interview grounds, you were condescending towards not only not only to the panel, uh, you could have been rude to even people at the lowest ranks, and that could cause you, uh, you know, that could spell the doom for you. Even at the gate, some of these gate men or security men are institutions on their own. Some have been there for God knows how many years, and you have no idea, the kind of influence they wield within the company. Some of them are consulted in decision making, and so it is important that um, you respect anybody you come across, irrespective of the ranks they hold, even at the gate, from the top to the lowest. Uh, you try as much as possible to treat them with the utmost respect. So those are the acts that constitute unprofessional behaviors, being late, the use of wrong, or inappropriate language, jargons and cliches that are not relevant within the corporate circles, and then being disrespectful. Note this is very important. Uh, being disrespectful not only towards the panel members, but to all people, at the premises, including the lowest ranked individual at the premises. Good. So that's about it. Now, another reason why you failed or you could fail your interview is lack of communication skills. In fact, of all the skills, of all the employable skills, the most cherished is communication skills, your ability to properly organize your thoughts and clearly communicate them, articulate them. That is the skill most employers look out for. And so it is you should be intentional about it. You should be particularly intentional about developing communication skills. You went there, you struggle to express your thoughts clearly, and then you had difficulty organizing your answers. And then you also fail to provide specific examples. If you did all these at the interview, of course, you didn't send a good impression. You didn't make a good impression about yourself. And so the outcome is almost certain. How do you deal with communication challenges? I said that you should make it intentional. In particular, there are lots of resources. Uh, that are bound. There are lots of videos and on YouTube and you know useful resources across the internet that could help you deal with your communication deficiencies. In fact, it is the most sought after. Between 60-69% of your employer 60-69% of employers tend to favor people with strong communication skills ahead of um, any other skills possessed by any applicant. And so it is important that you develop a strong communication skills. Good. And you know, in dealing with this communication issue to uh, prior to an interview, you could also rehearse your answers. Look for questions that are likely to be asked by the panel on the basis uh, of the company's structure. You know, when you have critically and comprehensively studied the company structure, you are likely to predict you can predict some likely questions, and so you rehearse on these questions how you would answer them in case they appear you are asked to do so on the D-Day. So communication skills, very important. You failed to exhibit strong communication skills, and that is the reason you failed your interview. It is important that you intentionally look at ways of correcting this deficiency, as it is an important skill that is sought after by employers. Good. Now, the fourth reason uh, that accounted for your failure, or that was responsible for your failure, or if you are a future, if you are a future, uh, you know, interviewee, that could account for your failure at the interview is being overqualified or underqualified. If you are overqualified, it means that uh, your experiences, your experiences and qualifications far exceed the positions being advertised. For example, you are a PhD holder that allows you to teach at the university, you know, and then that is with overqualification that allows you to teach at the university. In a private institution, a private, um, you know, junior high school advertises for a position, and then you turn up at the interview, and it is going to raise a lot of skepticisms. Employers are likely not to hire you because you're overqualified. Probably you are using it as a stopgap just for the paychecks, and that they think that once they give you that opportunity, you have a much better opportunity. You are likely to leave them in no time. And so if you are overqualified, you stand a chance of losing out on uh, getting employed, getting hired by your employers. And then with underqualification, it means that your certificates or your qualifications do not meet the minimum requirements. Um, yes, you do not meet the minimum requirements. So what they do, what some employers would like to play the devil's advocate. They would they would employ you on probational basis. If it happens that way, it means that you are lucky. It is up to you to prove yourself that indeed, uh, you can fit within the organizational structure of the company. So you can be admitted, or you can be hired on probational basis, even if you are underqualified. Good. Now, another factor that accounted for your failure is lack of grooming. Lack of grooming, yes. You were, and this one specifically about body grooming. Your hair was unkempt. You want to keep your hair long, yes, but make sure it is properly kempt when appearing before the panel. You want to keep it short, yes, make sure it is still kempt when you are appearing before the panel. You appeared before You appeared before the panel, um, with unkempt hair, and then unkempt facial, grooming, lack of facial grooming. You have overgrown hair on your face, your hair is not properly kempt, and then you have wrinkled clothing. Your clothes are not even ironed, you know. Um, so they will judge you based on your appearance. They will say that you are not prepared for the job, and then uh, you could be properly dressed. You could be properly dressed, your hair properly kempt, your face you are properly kempt, properly groomed face. Yet you might not be appropriately dressed. You are properly dressed, but not appropriately dressed. Uh, let's see. Um, you are looking for a job within the banking sector. You appeared before the panel with your hoodie, nice hoodie with your jeans, and then your trainers. You are properly dressed, but you are not appropriately dressed. The kind of dress you are wearing is not appropriate for the occasion. And so as you groom yourself, it is also very important. It is also very important that you dress not only properly, but you dress appropriately, because your appearance speaks volumes of you, and it is going to play in the determination of whether or not you should be considered for the job you applied for. Good. Another factor, the sixth of the factors that could account for your failure, or must have accounted for your failure, or accounted for your failure in the past, is the display of negative outlook. Yes, you went there, you sounded so pessimistic. You didn't inspire any confidence and hope. Um, you know, uh, you were dismissive of their questions. You were also evasive. You were dodgy, in terms of your answers or responses to the questions they asked. Um, you know, if you go there with such negative attitude, you are likely not to be considered. And note this, note this, note this. It is very, 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 very important that when you attend interviews, you attend any interview, you do not badmouth your previous employer or co-workers. What do I mean? You trash talk them. You tell, you present them to your current prospective employer in the negative light. Remember that corporate organizations are particular about their goodwill and reputation. So your prospective employer, the one whom you have presented yourself for an interview, would think that once you are bad mouthing, you are talking bad about your previous employer and your co-workers, your previous co-workers, you are likely to do the same to them. Yes, should you are given the opportunity and you are leaving. And so it is important that if they ask you any questions about your previous employment, you keep it as simple as you can, um, and make it such that it is devoid of any form of trash talking, any form of denigration, anything that will prevent uh, that does not cast your previous employer and your co-workers in the negative light. How do you do that? Tell them that, um, no, they normally would ask you why you left the job. Uh, they normally would ask you why you left the job. Tell them that you have different perspectives. You and the company have different perspectives, culture, and traditions, as well as procedures, or probably you want to take up a new challenge. When you say that it answers your questions, so it answers their question, you can you know answer the question of how or why you left your previous employment without bad mouthing or speaking ill about your bad company. It's a major put off. It's a major put off. Your CV might not be on the desk for consideration. It might directly end up in the bin. So this is a very, very, very important point. You don't go and speak trash about your previous employer and your co-workers, because they know that what goes around comes around. You could turn against them the same way when the tables turn. And so you take note of this. Now, what else could account for your failure, or must have accounted for your failure, or accounted for your failure in the past? Unrealistic salary. Unrealistic salary, yes. Companies, interviewers have made it a point, for whichever reason, have made it a point to ask interviewers how much they think is enough, how much they'll be content with if they are paid. So at the end, towards the end of the interview, they will ask you, so how much do you expect as your salary? Now the company might be prepared to pay you $100,000 per annum, but you stated $120,000 per annum. It means that there's a difference of $20,000. You see, a difference of $20,000, and how does the company make this difference to just to pay you alone? And so they think that if they also are unable to get you the difference, you might not be content. You might not be content with the salary, and so they might end up not hiring you on the basis of your salary expectations. What do you tell them? Tell them that yes, you want to focus on landing the job first, and then you research about the position you are looking for, so you can give them a realistic quotes or quotings, or realistic response to their question. So anytime they ask you how much do you expect, tell them that your focus is on the job you are looking for, and that you can only make a realistic response after you have landed the job. And I think nobody, and in an extreme cases where they demand you are filling a form, if it is not mandatory that you include it, leave it blank. If it is expected, if it is mandatory that you state the amount you expect, label it 1111, 4 ones. It is going to give them an indication that you simply do not want to state how much you want to take. It is very important. Your expectation against the expectations of the company. If you're having parallel expectations, it has the potential to affect your chances, because the company might not be willing, or is simply not in the position to give you the difference. And in doing so, it affects your chances of getting the job. Good. The eighth point is that you went to the interviewing or the interview room smelling alcohol, or cigarette, or smoke. Yes. So if if your interviewer happens to be someone who smokes himself, he might overlook it. But if you are unfortunate and your interviewer is not a smoker, um, you might miss out on the chance of getting hired. It is important that for that particular day alone, on that particular day alone, you refrain from alcohol. At least before the interview, you refrain from alcohol or a cigar or any form of, you know, any such thing that could that could easily be smelled and have a negative impact on you as far as the decision on your interview is concerned. Good. So that's about it. Stop smoking on the day of the interview, at least before you present yourself for the interview. Good. Or drinking as well. Good. The ninth point that is responsible or accounted for your failure is uh, the fact that there was strong competition. Yes, there was strong competition. Sometimes it is not because you did not do well at the interview, but it is because you might have done well, you might have done very well, but there were people who did much better. And so uh, such people were given the opportunity to, ahead of you. It is not because you did not do well. It is because the competition you faced was tough or tougher, in which case such people who are deemed much qualified would be considered. Good. So that's about it. If you have a much tougher competition, in spite of your performance, at the interview, you still could end up not landing the job. And so failure to land jobs at interviews is not always as a result of poor performance or poor performances. You could have done your best. You you did you exhibited your qualities. Uh, you were apt with your communication. You dressed properly. All the things I mentioned. You still could lose out, and elsewhere you could have been hired, but because this particular competition might have been great or tough, you ended up, and because there are very few spaces for interviewees, they ended up selecting on the one they deemed most appropriate. So it is not always the case that you lost out the job or you didn't qualify for the job because of poor showing or poor performance at the interview. That is the penultimate point, as far as this discussion is concerned. And then finally, ultimately, failure to ask thoughtful questions. Failure to ask thoughtful questions. Employers have made it as part of their interviewing routines to ask you to, uh, come up with questions, ask them questions as an interviewee. And so, if you fail to ask them questions, it tells them that you are not enthusiastic about the job you are applying for or you have applied for. Uh, and so it raises a red flag if you fail to ask them thoughtful questions. In some cases, some people fail to answer any questions, fail to ask any questions. It's not a good practice. Before you appear for the interview, make sure that you have read a little about the company. I mean, not a little actually. you have read extensively about the company so that you can ask relevant questions, thoughtful questions. If you ask those thoughtful questions, uh, it gives them the impression that the, the applicant in question is determined to uh, learn about or interested in the position he so much, desires to acquire or to occupy. So that's about it. I have looked at how your, you could pass, why you failed your interviews, or you might fail your interviews, or what must have accounted for your failures. So uh, I believe that these are very uh, thoughtful, uh, thoughtful points we can uh, ponder over as we uh, prepare to enter the job market. Uh, I believe it's been a wonderful engagement. I'm going to see you some other time. Have a very good evening. Bye.